Found within every type of orc warband are mobs of terrifying and diminutive greenskins called Gretchen. These tiny greenskins are made to fight tooth and claw for their pitiful lives, and when forced to fight or die, a sizable mob of grots can overrun a well-prepared foe, clawing and biting frantically in desperation to stay alive. Though not especially dangerous up close, the average Gretchen is more than capable of outshooting his orc masters. This talent goes largely to waste, of course, as no self-respecting orc is going to give a decent shoot to these Gretchen. However, the mass volleys with the so-called grot blasters can cause a surprising amount of bloodshed. And not only are Gretchen needed on the battlefield, but when orcs are not waging war, it is the Gretchen who is in charge of the day-to-day activities of their orc masters, like raising squigs for food and sport, cleaning up after brutal and bloody brawls, and just about anything else that the orcs don't want to do for themselves. And with that said, I want to welcome you guys back to another 40 facts about the 40K universe. I am your host, Gretchin, and today we're going to be talking about the Gretchen, or the grot of the orc culture. If you guys are new to the channel, we post Warhammer 40K lore videos every single day. We tried to read the lore and then connect it to the hobby by either showcasing a terrain tutorial, a painting tutorial, or just a showcase video. At the end of this video, not only am I going to show you guys the Gretchen in my warband that I painted and they're all done, but I'm also going to be showing you guys how to do basing. I based each individual Gretchen with a special technique, so I'm going to be showcasing basically a basing tutorial for you guys. If you guys enjoy these types of content, or if you guys enjoy these types of videos, consider hitting the like button, sharing with your friends, just telling YouTube that you want to see more of this type of content. And if you have any questions about the 40K universe or any suggestions for other topics, let me know what they are in the comment section below. I am an orc player, so you guys are probably going to get a lot of orc videos in the coming days, just because I've gotten bit by the orc bug with all the new releases that were announced with the Snagaboys, so I'm trying to paint up my orcs and all that kind of stuff. But with all that said, let's get into 40 facts on the Gretchen. Although known to the Imperium as Gretchen, most orcs call them grots, as they don't care to differentiate between the Gretchen and the snotlings. Although they possess a similar physiology to their larger brethren, they are not as strong or as tough. To compensate for this, the Gretchen possess an abundance of low cunning. They scurry around the larger greenskins on scrawny legs, their grasping fingers over-snatching and covertly stealing from the unwary. Gretchens have large bulbous heads and wide tattered ears that flatten against their bald plates when they're afraid, which is almost all the time. Sharp fangs fill their jaws, ever ready to be sunk into the flesh of the weak and the infirm, and malice gleams in their eyes whenever there is an opportunity for violence. The Gretchen's large nose gives them an excellent sense of smell, their ears afford them a similar advanced sense of hearing, and their eyesight is acute even in the dark. These traits, combined with an innate talent for self-preservation, mean that the Gretchen can not only survive, but thrive in a society dominated by vicious predators. Some Gretchen have their survival instincts honed to such a degree that they possess a rudimentary sixth sense. It improves their chances of survival by exhibiting fawning behavior to their orc masters. Though brave, Gretchen will pull face and make rude gestures behind the backs of a bigger greenskin. Few are stupid enough to risk doing so openly. Gretchen are faster, leaner, and quick to spot an opportunity, meaning that many wind up as assistants or servants to more important orcs like mech boys or knobs. Others simply attempt to stay out of the orcs' way. Whole groups of grots fashion hideouts amidst the scrap piles and tunnels too constricted for orcs to squeeze their bulk down. When the time comes to go to war, the Gretchen are flushed out of these hideouts en masse by squig hounds of the Runt herders or a few enthusiastic burner boys. As the downtrodden underclass of greenskin society, Gretchen get herded into battle whether they want to or not. Though far from natural warriors, they are at least passable shots, and can prove surprisingly dangerous in large numbers. Coupled with their vicious streak, this makes Gretchen mobs more of an asset than they may first appear. Gretchen mobs make up for their shocking lack of quality with sheer quantity. The natural cowardice and feeble-limbed incompetence of the Gretchen subspecies does not predispose them to the art of war, and a typical grot would prefer to have his head buried in a spore hole than actually participate in a proper battle. There do exist Gretchens with a little more backbone, and when emboldened by the possession of their own guns, these diminutive greenskins can be enlisted with a promise of plunder, or when that fails, threats of beatings. The short-range nature of the ramshackled weapons typically afforded to the Gretchen mobs encourage them to get into the thick of fighting quicker. They have rusted pistols, simple knives, and occasionally a blunderbuss. Gretchen are actually pretty good marksmen, and when the orcs allow them to have better firearms, they might even possess a credible threat to the enemy. The sad reality, however, is that the Gretchen mobs rarely win any glory on the battlefield, as they are used by the orcs as a combination of cannon fodder, bullet shields, mine clearance devices, and living carpets. A mob of Gretchen is generally several dozen strong, the grots bickering and shrieking as they scamper towards the foe. Some are savvy enough to recognize that there is no point in trying to defy their orc masters, acknowledging that their best chance of survival lies in showing willingness. These grots are at least allowed to pick and choose where and who to fight on the battlefield. As for the rest of their kind, their reluctance to see frontline action is usually remedied by a swift boot to the head from the nearest runt herder. Runt herders are tough and leathery old odd boys with a strange predisposition towards the control and well-being of their tribe's grots. Far from seeing this as a chore, they relish in their work, for theirs is an ancient and well-respected orc profession with the added perk that a snack is not too far away, which means runt herders eat ass. Gretchen ass. Runt herders often cement their natural control over the lesser greenskins with a large spiked claw on a pole. Affectionately known as a grab-a-stick, the runt herder can catch a fleeing grot and hurl the offending runt into a nearby minefield with one fluid motion. Low-key, they straight up sound like a Gretchen's pimp. Many runt herders will have their local mech boys carry out a snazzy upgrade to their stick, modifying it into a crackling grot prod that can be used to deliver a nasty jolt to a squig, a runt, or anything else in reach. Needless to say, these odd boys delight in the sight of enemy warriors doubled over in convulsion as high-voltage currents run through their bodies. Only once the foe is down for the count do the runt herders release their voracious squig hounds to finish the job. The most common type of Gretchen is called a mob Gretchen. These are the ones that are either too stupid, too brave, or too unlucky to find a safer place in an orc tribe. They are pressed onto the front lines by a runt herder, their life expectancy is very small, and are either used as living shields by the orcs, as living mine detectors, or as cannon fodder. The next tier up of Gretchen are those grots that got favored by some orc knob and are now filling roles that are a little specialized for that individual orc master, such as the ammo runt, where the Gretchen's role is to make sure that his orc master never runs out of ammunition, or at least not too fast to enjoy the fighting. Then there's the messenger Gretchen, known as a sty boy. These climb on their master's shoulder and wave flags with orcish glyphs to relay information from one orc warband to the next. This long-range communication system might seem crude, but it allows a measure of coordination between an orc mob when they are out of shouting range. Then you have the more specialized Gretchen, like the orderlies that assist the orc pain boys who carry out surgery during the battles, and is always there to hold up limbs or bandage up and stitch up dying orcs. And then there's the repair Gretchen, who serves an orc mech boy, and he usually either embarks on one of the many vehicles to keep an eye on its systems and perform basic emergency repairs, or gathers around the orcish master to provide some type of assistance. The luckiest Gretchen, in my opinion, is the gun crew Gretchen. They operate the orcish artillery pieces, whether they're on static emplacements or they're part of a vehicle. The only problem with being a gun Gretchen is that the guns themselves are extremely unreliable, and the mortality rate of the gun crew is still pretty high. There are also some lucky Gretchen that are singled out by their mechboy masters to get hardwired into a Kilicon combat walker. Most Gretchens are all too eager to get a chance to pilot these war engines, and after the implantation, they usually celebrate by stomping whoever had previously bullied them into a fine paste. However, even with the increased firepower, Kilicon pilots are still cowards at heart, and some cons have been known to run off the battlefield at the first sign of danger. We'll talk more about the Kilicons in a separate video. Now that we know the lore to the Gretchen, I want to showcase the Gretchen that I painted about a really long time ago. As you can see, the paint job isn't all that great, and that's because this is acrylic paint from Walmart. It's a surprise to me that it hasn't rubbed off. Usually what happens is when you use acrylic paint on the plastic models, when you're handling the actual miniatures, the paint starts to rub off. That hasn't happened to these guys. So thankfully, I can still play them on the tabletop. When I do play them on the tabletop, it's just a quick little troop choice. When the boys' slots are being occupied by like elite or something else, and I just need to throw in like a troop choice in order to complete my battle ready. Our warband, these guys are really good, like a 10-man squad of Gretchen. I don't even think you have to bring the runt herder anymore. But either way, I think the craziest thing they've ever done is they took out a flying hive tyrant. I talked about that in one of the Greater Wall episodes that came out this week. So check out the Greater Wall episodes if you want that story. But yeah, what I did do with all these models is I did a special base for each one, and I want to showcase that for you now. Welcome back to another basing tutorial. Today I'm going to teach you how to make a simple and easy lava base. So the first thing I did is I took the base and I added some PVA glue. Now the important thing to note here is you want to leave spaces, almost like rivers through your base, because this is going to be where the lava is going to flow. And then I added some sand, of course, and this is going to act as the little islands in between. Now I didn't like how some of the rivers didn't connect, so I went back with a pen and I pushed the glue out of the areas where I want the lava to flow. I primed the entire thing black, and now I'm dry brushing a gray. Don't worry about getting it inside the actual lava area, because like you see right there, you're going to go over it with red. And once you have the red completely on, you want to add some yellow. Now as you can see there, I am still allowing some of the red to show through on the bottom. In my opinion, you're gonna see towards the end, the less yellow I think looks a little better, so it's really up to you. But then I added some very thin white, and there you go. That is a very simple, easy, quick lava base. It's not hard at all. You just got to play around with the colors and play around with the thicknesses of each of the colors. If you guys like this basing tutorial, be sure to check the channel because I have a lot more. Thank you for supporting One Mind Syndicate by sharing this video and liking it. And if you guys want to support us on Patreon, go ahead, go over to Patreon and pledge your awesome donation. I'm trying to save up for a Ferrari. I have a long way to go. But thank you guys so much for watching. This was Gretchin with One Mind Syndicate. Alright guys, welcome to the basing tutorial that I'm going to do here for my Gretchen. First you add in a bunch of Elmer's glue, white glue, PVA glue, whatever you want to call it. And you just want to make sure to get it all the way around the base, all sexy like. And then you add in some rocks. Make sure to place the rocks closer to the edge so your models have space to actually sit or stand. I did the rocks a little too close in my opinion, but oh well. And then you just dip it with some sand. I bought this sand at Michael's for like $1 or $2, and it's lasted me a very long time. So shake off the sand and that's it. And now let's go into the painting. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to paint the big rocks gray. Gray that I'm using is again the cheap type of gray that you can get like at Walmart or at any craft store, and I do that because it's a base. You don't need to use expensive paints. I forgot to tell you guys, I primed it black before I painted the gray. So now let's hit it with some brown. Pretty self-explanatory. I did brown because that was the closest thing that I had. Now for the brown, what I'm gonna do is apply a dry brush of a lighter brown, just to bring up some of the details on the ground. I really love dry brushing just because it brings out so much of the detail, and it gives this sense of dryness to the model that you're painting, or in this case the base that I'm painting. Alright, now that we have that, I'm going to dry brush it one more time, but this time with a white. Be sure not to do it too much, otherwise it's gonna look kind of like snow. I mean, unless that's the thing that you're going for, but I know I'm not, so this should be good. Alright guys, and there is the awesome base that I made. Hope you guys enjoyed watching this tutorial on this basing. If you guys want to check out more basing tutorials, be sure to subscribe because I'm going to upload a couple more for this Gretchen modeling log. Welcome back to another basing tutorial. So first thing I do for this base is take a piece of foam board and cut a little square that's going to fit inside my base. That's going to act as one of the walls to the mech shop or scrap metal yard, whatever you want to call it. I dug some holes in there to look like bullet holes, and now I'm cutting some pieces of cardboard in little squares to act as the scrap metal that's going to be laying on the floor of the base. Now I'm taking a toothpick and cutting small little cylinders in it. This is basically gonna act as either, if I can make them small enough, they're gonna act as bullets. If they're too big, then they're just gonna be random pieces of metal that are laying around that the mech used or that the Gretchen were carrying around. Now I add the PVA glue or Elmer's glue, whatever you want to call it, onto the base, and I start laying out my pieces. So the wall I want to put as close to the edge as possible, and then the scrap metal I want to layer it together. One of the scrap metals though, or one of the pieces of cardboard, I want to put onto the wall like as if it's standing up, just to give the base a little bit more character. And then I position everything with my hobby knife, and now I'm gonna throw in some rocks. These rocks are, you know, showing that the mech tool is dirty, or the mech base is dirty. It might be outside, and there's a bunch of things all over it. Now I'm gonna flock it with some sand. Now I prime the model black, and now I'm adding the dirt brown color to the bottom of the base. Now, like I said before, this tool or this scrap metal yard is actually outside, so there's gonna be mud dirt on the floor. Now I'm dry brushing it with a lighter brown, just bringing up some of the highlights of the sand that I glued down there. And now we're gonna move on to painting the bigger pieces. I painted the rocks gray, and now I'm painting the scrap metal a metallic color. And you guys aren't gonna see this, or you guys didn't see this, but I painted, or I dry brushed the wall with a white, because I wanted to leave that contrast between the rocks and the wall, because I didn't want the wall to look like a rock. And now I'm painting the bullets, or the cylinder scrap metal, and as you can see, I made a checkered pattern on one of the scrap metals, and this is the finished piece. There are multiple ways you can go about adding different things to the base. You could even add some extra scraps that you got laying around from other kits onto this base, just to make it more scrap yard looking, I guess. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. Comment down below if you guys have any questions. I know I skipped over some of the painting steps, but I'll be happy to answer them in the comment section below. We're going to continue doing more basing tutorials on this Gretchen modeling log. Welcome back, guys, to another basing tutorial. First thing you do is you take a piece of pink foam and you cut it to make it, I guess, smaller in length. And then now what I'm doing is I'm cutting the template that I drew on of the base. This is gonna act as the ground part of the base. I am cutting the edges just to clean it up a bit, and now I'm cutting the little valley ravine thing in the middle, and now I'm making sure that it fits well on the base, and again doing the whole cleanup thing by cutting the edges. And like I said before, this is acting as the ground part to the base where the model is actually going to stand, and then the space in between is going to represent where the leaking waste is going to be. I added some sand on there and I squished it together just to puff it up. I primed it black, and now I'm painting the land parts brown to match with all my other figures, but you can add on whatever color you want. If you have gray bases, go with gray. Now I'm dry brushing the brown with a lighter brown just to bring out the details of the rock. And now it's time for the good part. I am going to start painting the green goo, or the green waste that is going through the rocks. To do this, I started with a pretty dark green, and after that you lighten it up by either adding white to your initial green color, or if you have multiple colors, just go with the lighter green that you might have. And I do this 3 times, making sure to make the lines thinner and thinner as the lighter the green gets. And there you have it. You have yourself your own little leaking waste base. You can do this for pretty much anything, and as a matter of fact, you could also not do the rocky look to the top of the base. What you could do is you could just try your best to cut it evenly so there is no rockiness to it, and it's just a straight base. I'll create another tutorial explaining what I mean later on. But yeah, this is the leaking waste space through the Gretchen camp that I created. I hope you guys enjoyed this basing tutorial. Welcome back to another basing tutorial. For this tutorial, I took a piece of cardboard. I took the back of a HeroClix box, and now I am drawing the outline of the base onto the cardboard piece and drawing checkered patterns, which are going to be the checkered patterns for my Orky checkered scrap base. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the cardboard with the pattern that I just did. What I like to do is use scissors, because if I use my hobby knife, the hobby knife does not cut as well. And the reason I'm doing this as opposed to just drawing the pattern onto the base is because it adds a three-dimensional look that just makes it a whole lot better. So what I am doing now is just adding a bunch of PBA glue onto the base to stick the checkered pieces onto the base with my hobby knife. The reason I'm using my hobby knife is because if I try to use my fingers, it's just going to be way too messy. Glue gets all over my fingers and the pieces stick to my fingers, and it's just horrible. Now, as you can see, the pattern is not perfect, and that's because this is an Orky base. Orcs don't really care about patterns or anything of that nature, or organized patterns of that nature. I sprinkled some sand on there, and now I based it black. I'm priming the sand parts brown, because that's what the rest of my bases within this squad looks like. So I'm trying to keep the colors I guess uniform. Now I'm adding a dry brush of a lighter brown and making sure to hit all those cool details. Now this is the fun part. This is the part where I get a good brush and I start painting on some white paint onto the scrap pieces. Of course, I want to go an alternating pattern so it looks like a checkered pattern at the end. The reason I chose white is just because it's gonna pop when people look at it, but you can use any colors that you want. I would recommend though lighter colors with dark colors, just to add more contrast between the two, so it looks really nice. Now, fluff wise, you can consider this anything that has to do with orcs that fell on the ground. For instance, it might have been a gargantuan orc snappa that fell apart, and now its design or scraps are all over the ground, and the Gretchen or orcs are running around on top of these things. I like to add fluff to my bases, or I like to think about the fluff to my bases, which is why I'm telling you guys this. But as you can see, I added the I added the red color onto the base, giving it that checkered pattern. And now I'm going to go over the edges and parts of the center with metallic, because these are metallic scrap pieces of metal, and when it fell from the stampa, it probably got all scratched up, and it probably got all scratched up while it was on the stampa. This adds a really nice third color to the base, and it just, you know, like I said before, drives home the idea that these are scrap pieces of metal that were painted by the orcs. And there you go, that is my Orky checkered scrap base. It's a lot better than just putting a bunch of scrap pieces of cardboard on top of each other and dry brushing them. This pattern gives more of a cool aesthetic. And that was it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys have suggestions for other topics or any model that you guys would like me to cover, let me know what it is in the comment section below, and I'll talk to you tomorrow. This was Gretchin with One Mind Syndicate signing out.
Put my freedom first in any situation.